Welcome to Exploring the Metaverse, where we explore the depths of virtual and augmented reality in the ever expanding metaverse and how that applies to regular people. Today's guest, Mr. Doug Shapiro, VP of Research and Insights at Sustainable Office and Healthcare Furniture Manufacturer OFS, and the host of the Imagine a Place podcast. As well, in 2021, Doug won the Interior Designs Honoring Industry People, the HIP Leader Award, for his 15 years pioneering innovation and creativity in the design industry. And I have to say, Doug, and to the audience listening to this, absolutely, he blew my mind with his incredible insights. And I really think you're going to feel the same way. So let's talk more rock. Let's go. Thank you, Doug, for being here on the show today. I really appreciate you taking time to be here. Mr. Doug Shapiro, of course, sir, it's an honor. Tell us about yourself and, your background, what basically brought us to this point today. You don't need to start in the very beginning, but, hello, sir.
Sure. Well, hello, Matthew, and thanks for having me. I am honored to be here with you. Looking forward to a fun, spirited conversation. Well, I guess what led me to you was my my interest in place. So, place is different from space in a meaning. Space is place when it doesn't have meaning,
Yes.
and space becomes place when it communicates something, whether it serves you functionally or emotionally. That's when a place really is a place. So I host a podcast called Imagine a Place, and I speak with designers, architects, real estate, facilities people, anybody that's building place. And the metaverse is a place.
It is a
And
place.
I don't know that that the professions that I speak to every day are there in their head and their mind yet about how they apply their skills in the metaverse.
Wow. Doug, that's so important. That's such a huge foundational building block of this sort of like vision and dream and just sort of like idea that I've always had of this concept. It's still relatively vague to me. And I think that, individuals such as yourself really have the possibility to help define and shape what that meaning of place really is when we're in a virtual world. I have a background as a person like liking to play video games, and I played World of Warcraft for 12 years. And in that game is a major identity in a place, and it's called Azeroth. That's the name of the place that we go in this virtual world. And to me, that seems perfectly rational and completely quote unquote normal, but when you speak about these real life examples, such as an office building or a hospital, family room to have a beautiful place for people to gather, I look at a virtual metaverse as a very similar concept, that it's a place for people to gather. Um, do you
Yeah.
think this is an inevitable step forward into these virtual
It's
places?
it's an inevitable step forward, but it poses a lot of challenges that come with it because we we have developed a great understanding of how place affects us. In fact, there is all sorts of standards. I'll use a really popular one, the well building standard. So that means if you've achieved the well building standard, you are now in a place that supports your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, your nutrition, and there's all sorts of attributes to this place that win you that ability, like score you points and win you that ability to say that you're well certified.
8 glasses of water today.
I mean, and access to clean water, furniture and spatial layouts that support movement.
Oh yeah.
Um, a sense of belonging, and whether you've brought that into this environment. And there's all sorts of criteria that measure that, air quality, things like that. Now, we know places affect us, and to build a place, you have to be a certified architect or certified designer. So the amount of schooling that an architect goes through to build a place is not, I mean, first of all, it's very intense. And even to be a designer, right? To lay out the interior of a place, you have to pass the NCIDQs, right? And that gives you a license to practice interior design at the highest level. And to do that, it goes way beyond like structural, where if you think it's all
Just
just about,
deciding where the walls go type of thing. I mean, how
right,
big is the floor space and which door goes where?
it goes well beyond that into context. And because the professions have understood that we build places and those places build us right back. And so how we build our places, how our cities look, how our spaces look that we live in have tremendous impact on our brains. I
Big
mean,
time.
there's to the point that, there's a lot of crossover between the medical professions and interior design and architecture, because of this. So now, as we begin to build out a metaverse, are we going to approach it with the same sort of vigor? And, you know, um, I mean, part of it is there are no constraints, but at the same time, how do we make it so not everybody can just build anything if the things we're building are not going to shape us in the ways that we hope?
And doesn't that provide an open opportunity for each and every creator of these spaces to redefine what that really means and how that space affects the individuals who it's targeting? So, obviously there's so many different demographics and groups of individuals that are going to have different expectations, different definitions of that warmth and comfort and that
Mm,
feeling of place. And I look at the individuals who are currently designing a lot of the existing projects, and they're incredibly talented individuals with high level capacity for creativity and for building of new things. But yet, you bring up this incredibly important point that mindset and that approach to building these new places is incredibly important in how it'll be received and perceived by the general public and the end users.
absolutely. So I hope we see the metaverse through that same lens, that place is impacting us, and how we design place should be taken just as seriously as how we design it in the real world, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then it leads into, I mean, if you think about how we design in the real world, okay, I'm going to select carpet, I'm going to select furniture. Well, someone designed that carpet, someone designed that furniture. Now, when you buy that furniture or that carpet, the designers of those pieces receive a royalty. And that's how they're inspired to continue to design and build beautiful, great things. Um, well, now how does that work? I'm thinking, okay, we just start to design these spaces. Are we going to, how are we going
To
to,
me, that ties directly, not to cut you off, but directly to the blockchain and directly to the
mm,
way that the cryptographic environment currently exists, in that we can tie that particular texture or that particular pattern or that particular animation to the creator at all times, and they can be, rightly compensated for their work through a smart contract or other similar process.
that is a beautiful answer, to what I had struggled with in my head a little bit. Like, how do designers continue to be inspired to do
Yeah, they're
great
just like
work?
NFTs. I mean, you've got the brick pattern that's the, not sponsored, Versace special or whatever brand or influence placed upon it. To me, that's a clear intersection that could be beneficial for both parties, can inspire greater and more talented and relevant designers to design these places. Like, you talk about Mr. Zuckerberg's current images and graphics that they've shared with the public, and I think of it and I'm like, I'd rather be in Azeroth. The music, the environment, the feeling, it just seems more inviting. And I see these sort of cold avatars in this lifeless place. And I think, man, I think we need Mr. Doug Shapiro to bring a little bit of humanity to these places.
Oh yeah, what a great word. And it's kind of interesting to imagine out and think, okay, if we're able to, are we going to get to a point where we're doing things so well in the metaverse that we begin to design places in the physical world that represent some of what we've been able to achieve in the metaverse? Because in the beginning, it will sort of be the other way around, right?
Yeah,
We'll
especially
take the
for
best
people who don't have that
practices.
experience.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We'll take the best practices we have right in front of us and we'll apply those to the metaverse until eventually we go the other way around.
And someone creates this gold standard, right? This place that becomes almost more appealing than our existing world. And I know that's a really controversial take for a lot of people. And I don't propose replacing reality in any way, shape, or form, but literally, and no pun intended, augmenting our existing circumstances so that I envision this world where, my kids perhaps, or me or you are, maybe we're in an interview, or maybe we're in a meeting, and maybe we're attending a course, and, we're in a virtual school or a virtual boardroom. And I think it's so important to have that feeling of immersion. And I've talked to
Mm,
a few people who have these interesting angles to bring these realities together, but to come at it from the angle that you approach it, I think is sort of the like the linchpin. It's the central pin of the hub, because if we don't build it in a human-centered way from the beginning, it could really get stuck in that sort of video game, sort of non-important type of space. And it's important to me, but maybe not to the executives in the Fortune 500 companies.
right, right. Yeah, and human centered is the key there. And even recently, I think we've begun to understand what human centered really means. Um, it doesn't mean being better at what we do. Like there was a while where human centered was like, how can we boost human performance? But this is more about a sense of belonging,
Yeah.
and a sense of self. And there is certainly a heavy impact that place has on those things. Um, there was something you said about, um, when you were describing place that I was interested in. Oh, the more immersive environment, right? And
Big
you
time.
describe being in this sort of class setting. I love the accessibility that the metaverse offers us. Um, there is there is accessibility. I was thinking like to biophilia. Okay, so we know the impact. You know the impact that plant life has on us, right? It lowers our stress,
Oh
reduces our
yeah.
anxiety.
It's like
It
happy.
helps us be our most creative self. And we go through great efforts to bring biophilia into the office environment, into a healthcare environment, into an education environment, and it will show up in the form of literally like bringing in plant life, and it
The
will also
living
show up in,
wall.
yes, the living wall, love it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it will also show up in just nature inspired colors, um, and patterns like wood grain, right? And now I'm thinking like, well, if you're in New York City, and you're in a small apartment, space is limited. It's hard to get out and really experience, maybe the wildlife that you really need, that the sort of forest bathing that can help you be your best self.
Oh, it's a
The metaverse is
cleansing,
a
right?
great person. Yeah, metaverse seems like a great accessibility to biophilia.
That's an interesting thing to correlate such an organic and living aspect of our world, and to just even consider, like, I wouldn't think about designing a metaverse based boardroom and having plants. It just seems so simple, I mean, honestly, but yet in the big picture, I think it could be so easily overlooked. And I mean, I look at the video game technology that's on the horizon, and I see things like, Unreal Engine 5, which is this incredible graphical three-dimensional building tool that designers can use to make these worlds. And then I look at the existing metaverse offerings, and I'm thinking to myself, why are we not making incredible worlds like this yet? And yeah, I just feel like we're at the beginning, right? I feel like this is such an incredible opportunity to define the future of the next generation of this incredible movement of basically just the internet in a general sense, but to make it so important to regular people that we really can't say no.
Yeah, yeah. That is, it's a fun thing to imagine. And I am, I mean, I am in the business of place, right? So for me, I don't I don't look at metaverse as something that we're fighting against. When I say
No.
we, you
Yeah.
mean, the real estate community and the furniture manufacturers and all the people that are invested in our places. Um, it's different. It's doing some of the same things for us, but I think there's a place for all of those talents
Yeah. Oh,
in
yeah.
the
I
metaverse.
think about,
And
the furniture company. As a layperson to that industry, I clearly have no connection or ties to that world, but it seems very simple to me that I have a prospective client anywhere in the world. And, this individual has probably got some buying power and they're just wanting to experience what it is that you offer more so than the typical two-dimensional images on the web page and maybe a Zoom call to have a chat about the products. But you might even just see them through that two-dimensional lens. But all we need to do is slip on a pair of goggles, or you get your Google Glass 17.0 installed, and you just hop into the showroom floor, and Doug can just tap on a couch or tap on a plant and change it, move it, shift it, scale it up and down, and completely work through that place with that individual and giving them. I mean, I can think of a world where they can have sensors, and experiences that they can smell the room, that we can get a feeling of the humidity level and the fabrics and the feel, the differences of that. And I look at this for every industry and how this can be an incredible sales tool to
oh
bring the
yeah.
bottom line up, right? And yes, and massive investment needs to come in. And I get that the foundation, the structure is rickety at best at this point. But I really do think that this is, the metaverse universities of the future are really not that far away.
No, no. And it's funny, visualization has been key. And I have been in the industry long enough to know I've had so many of those conversations where this is the early days of rendering, 15 years ago. And then the furniture is installed and it's like, whoa, I didn't know it was
It,
going to look
it
like
wasn't what
that.
I
Yeah.
imagined. It's not what I visualized it would
Yeah.
feel or look like, right?
And even as photorealistic as we're making our renderings, um, it it's often not the way maybe you had imagined when you're standing in the space and looking around. And to think that, wow, you can have this real vivid experience. And to some degree we're doing that. But not in the most mainstream, easily accessible way.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that a human connection still needs to be made. That feeling. I think for most people, I mean, that's a generalization, of course, but I think it's very common, at least, that the concept of that value proposition really truly being there, not just a fanciful notion in my head. I don't think that's been expressed yet. I don't think that the accessibility has really reached enough of a critical mass and that enough people have experienced it to tell their neighbor and to encourage major companies to really bring the access price point down, 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 so that everyone, as many as possible, and these markets, these yet to be tapped markets where access to technology might be more limited, I think that the potential there is really quite unlimited, and for almost any type of industry to move their product. I mean, I see that there has to be a return on investment, not to just build a fancy computer system, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I think about, I think about that kind of mainstream accessibility, and I try to relate it to maybe like other things that we've gone through, because the metaverse as a concept that anyone might understand has not been around that long. Now, maybe
No.
you were way ahead of the curve. Okay. But for me, this is a 3-year-old notion, you know, uh, and you're thinking like maybe it's a decade, right?
10, at least 10.
10. But,
Like the
but,
hollow deck in Star Trek. I mean,
well, I mean,
yeah.
it wasn't entering my conversations
No,
once a month, 3 years ago. It was, it was way out there, right?
that's true.
Um, but I think about the beginning of internet, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
when that was coming into our homes, I could in that moment, and that wasn't even, I mean, it was a while ago, but I mean, in reality, that was just, halfway through my
Yeah,
lifespan,
20 years ago.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, I could not have even imagined what it would be like and what it would do for us just 10 years into it.
No,
And
no, I
so I'm
no.
kind of feel like I'm that way right now, thinking 10 years from now, I don't know what to imagine,
That's
because I
why I
know,
made this podcast,
yes,
because I
whatever I
feel that.
imagine, it won't
Yeah.
be good and it won't be enough.
No,
It won't be
no.
as incredible. I feel like we always like to look at the future as an extension of the present, and it's not. The future is on a different plane.
There's like a bridge to get there that I see, but I don't. Yeah, I don't think that the average end user really can conceptualize, even in a little way, how things will, I believe, inevitably change. And about that beginning of the internet, I feel like that's exactly the thing. This is a real parallel experience in that talking about it is almost taboo in some people's worlds. They look at it as just kind of a fad, a passing trend. I mean, yeah, some kids will play some games on their little headsets, but this isn't a serious business. This isn't a serious opportunity for my incredible company. And I really think it is, sir or ma'am. I really do believe that this is it's got so much momentum already. And even though you might not have heard of it, proverbial listener who's listening for the first time, thank you for listening. um, I think that it's really quite real. And even governmental organizations, like, is there any major impact in your industry, Doug, about coming from the government, and how, that's a bit of a stretch, but has there been any regulation positively for or against it that you've noticed on a large scale that could impact that growth in this direction, from a manufacturing, from a professional perspective?
Mm, mm. Um, to be honest, not that I'm aware of. No.
I think that's a
Um,
good thing. I feel like they're almost staying out of the way, and hopefully only putting their neck out for the major situations of personal safety and liability,
sure.
keeping family and kids and vulnerable sectors safe. We don't want to show up to Doug's virtual furniture showroom and find out all of a sudden that there's some inappropriate behavior occurring that was not authorized by yourself. And I think that's all still being built out. I find it really interesting because a major controlling world power could decide in their country, maybe China perhaps, that this isn't something that's acceptable for their citizens, and that cuts down a major market segment for an
Mm.
up and coming project.
Yeah, yeah. It's again, it's I can close my eyes and I can put myself in these spaces. Um, can I? But beyond that, it's hard for me to even like speak about it as if I was there,
Yeah.
and if I was facing some of the problems or pursuing an opportunity from a business standpoint. It's like my mind is just not there yet, but I am able to wonder about all the potential that place has, and kind of, and all the potential that design has.
Yes, I want to come right back to that, because that's literally the circle. It's that building, it's that beginning. And if we start with incredible designs and people and business centered thinking, I really think that you are poised to be at an incredible opportunity moving forward with your existing businesses. I don't know, but hey, all the power to each of those for you.
Sure.
And I think that this mindset of yours of building this type of place is it's so important. It's so central in the experiences that people have. And I think that I always look to the kind of mom example. Hi, mom, and hi, moms. I always look like, because, my mom's not super into technology for the most part. And I've always had to kind of sell her on a lot of it. And, she does most of the shopping. She does the designing for our
Mm.
her home. She's helped my dad designing in his hotel business, all sorts of spaces and textures and, art and all sorts of those details. And if I bring her for the first time to a virtual metaverse type space, I want her to feel something, right? I
Yeah,
want that,
because
right?
yeah, all those decisions she made, they built us. They built
Yes.
you. They impacted you in ways you'd have no idea. And it is kind of interesting. And I do feel like there's a change in things. So yes, people build buildings, buildings build us right back. But I do think that technology changes people,
Yeah.
and then people design buildings, and buildings build us back. And as technology changes, it shows up in the buildings. So it's not just a one-way street. I mean, as the metaverse and virtual reality kind of enter our lives, it will show up in the physical places that we make. It will show up in ways that maybe we don't know yet, or are not expecting. Actually, there was an interesting analogy of this that I heard, which was, if okay, so the written word, massive technology when that came out, when we were able to
Oh,
actually print on paper.
yeah.
Okay, well, prior to that, um, churches were like stages, where you could enact a play, and it was like you could tell a story on that stage. But then when the Bible was created, and there's when it was written and distributed, all of a sudden the building, the architecture of the
Oh,
church actually had changed, right?
yes.
And really centered around the written word. And well, that I mean that so that totally changed this. And now I think, even going beyond that, the way those institutions are built because of the technology that's changing us has changed again.
It's happening. Yeah.
And it will just keep happening. And it goes for every, not just churches, but every sort of building and place.
They just have such
um
a long-standing history in humanity. It's had a huge impact on basically every culture that exists.
yes, so there is this kind of technology comes and changes us tremendously, and it comes in these massive waves, and then we in turn change our buildings,
Yeah.
and then they keep building us back. And that's the part that's actually kind of interesting too, is it could go the other way here.
Absolutely. This is a lot speculation based on current events, right? But you never really truly know. And that is, I find so interesting. That's the part that brings me back for more, is I want to see the end of the story. And I want to know, what happens to the main characters. Where are we going to be? What's Mr. Zuck going to do? I mean, what are all these what are these opportunities? And I remember talking about these things like this in 1995, 1997, 1999, and I was in high school, disclaimer, and people were like looking at me like, Matt, you're crazy, bro. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is stupid. Like, they were mean to me. That's the least of it. And I just was steadfast in this vision, in this belief that the internet will change the world, and there's no greater force of information sharing. And this is incredible. And to me, it's just been as clear as day that this is kind of the same moment as when I held the Microsoft Encarta CD-ROM in my hand for the first time.
Oh
And I
man.
realized that this replaced the 28 books or 30 books that we had on this gigantic bookshelf that weighed 100 pounds. I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
and there's still room on the CD for more? They didn't even fill it. That's only 650 megabytes. What? And
That's
and I
so
look at
funny.
the metaverse and putting on a pair of virtual reality glasses like, How is this not going to happen? How could a post-pandemic world where isolation of humans is so prevalent, how could this not be amping up and being
Mm.
the next normal place for a kid to go for a job interview, where any of these type of circumstances? Where do I go and buy my new furniture for my office? I'll just pop over to Doug's place, and it's
I love it. I mean, if you have this notion, if you had these thoughts about the internet, right, in the mid to late 90s, that's first of all just fascinating, especially as a high schooler. Wow,
oh
hats off.
yeah. People
Um,
thought I was crazy.
I absolutely love it, and I wonder what's next. I mean, are you looking beyond the metaverse?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think this is the connection point that would allow us to, we could easily have people on their base in Mars sitting at a table in a room that's identical to a room on Earth. And you could literally sitting beside your mom and having a nice afternoon chat, and you'd feel like you're home because Doug has designed this incredible space that we enter and we share. And no matter where I am in the universe, we can have a shared experience that feels as close to real as we can get without actually being there. I prefer to be there. I love to go and hug my mom. I want to be there. I want to go for supper. I want to feel that
Mm.
human
You want to
emotion.
smell
Yes.
that
Yes.
smell
Yes. The
and
you walk
hear
in the
those
door.
sounds.
Yes, the supper, the little squeak of the door, the family pet, the kids. That's all more important to me. I don't ever lose that. But
Mm.
sometimes you can't have that. Sometimes that's not possible. And that hurts. But this is a way that we can transcend that shared human experience in a way that can benefit individuals, educational institutions, professionals in business, and beyond that, and, communication perhaps with even other entities. I know that's a bit out there, but yeah, I think this is the first step, though. I really do. I really think that finding the foundational building blocks, what kind of textures, what kind of
Mm.
spaces we build. This is why I really wanted to talk to you when was it Kat that reached out to me? Thank you very
Yeah.
much, Kat. I appreciate it because I thought, yeah, I could talk to the 17th NFT guy, or I could talk to this interesting individual who's doing something powerful and building that tie between the existing real and potentially in the future augmented worlds, right?
Well, I appreciate you, Matthew, for giving me that kind of credit, first of all. But I do believe in the power of design and our profession, and I've seen how it can change people.
Yeah.
I've seen how I mean, we all know that there's places we go that we feel great in, and there's places we go that depress us.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's it.
right.
I mean, just at that fundamental level, and then the amount of data that we're gathering as an industry
Oh,
on the impact of place on people is tremendous, and
and
so
those
I
people that don't want to go to their place of work is a massive trend right now. And if we could make that a little more appealing and the bosses can still get everything they need and the workers can still have that, okay, I'm still in my place, but you're still actually at work, but you're just there in a virtual way. I think that's a great possible compromise in, when the infrastructure exists where, okay, fine, you work at Facebook and you don't actually need to be there in the office, but you're going to be there in the office, but you can stay in your pajamas.
yeah, I mean, the return to work is a whole nother thing, but yeah, it has, place has such a big part in that. I mean, it has simply underserved us as a community of workers, and we've prioritized a lot of the wrong things
Oh,
in many of the office buildings we went back to, or would have to go back to. Um,
if
and
they'd
I
been
think
designed a little nicer from the ground up, maybe you'd be more happy to return.
absolutely a more human centered where, and there's a neurodiversity component to this too, where you have there's a tremendous pressure on physical place to provide choice because if I asked you to describe the normal person, you couldn't even do it. It's impossible. There's no such thing as a normal person.
Yeah.
So you've got this, we'll just use sensitivity, that spectrum, but there's so many more. You've got people who are hyposensitive, and they do their best work. They're feeling alive when there's a lot of movement and activity, right? Because they need that to keep their brains working and keep going. And then you've got people who are hypersensitive and they need areas of seclusion and the reality is in a workforce, you're going to have some of each of those. You're going to have people
Yeah.
down the middle, and you need to build spaces that accommodate all these
Oh,
different
wow.
personality types. I mean, if you want to
Yeah.
talk about an opportunity for the
What an
metaverse,
incredible idea.
yeah. So that's it. I mean, we got to get rid of the smudge of gray goo that we've seen in office buildings, the homogeneous spaces, um, and have spaces that carry the same sort of diversity of the people that go in them. And that sort of human-centered thinking applied to the metaverse is kind of, it's fun to
We
imagine.
could
So
each be in the same meeting, with each sitting in a theoretically different space, all sitting at the same table. You might want your place to feel like you're in a poolside bar in a tropical paradise, while I'd like mine to be in a mountain wilderness setting. I might have a fireplace burning to the left of me, and you have a pool bar to the right of you, but yet we're both invested in this moment, in this place, in our own way that makes us feel the best versions of ourselves that we can feel.
yeah, that's pretty fun to imagine. And just the variety that you'll bring into your day. And as long as it's, as long as it's not an escape, but
Yeah.
it's because it's the right thing to do at the time. That's when it's going to get really powerful. Super excited to imagine this with you. And Matthew, this is just so fun. Like
I appreciate it,
you're
Doug. Yeah, thank you very much for being here.
yeah, your curiosity and leadership in this subject, I'm
Thank you.
thankful to have
Thank you
had
very
this
much.
conversation.
It's my pleasure. Do you have any other news or upcoming events or things that you'd like to share with my listeners today in case they're interested in keeping track, following up, and seeing where you're going to go and be next?
Sure. Well, I actually, I'm inside of Imagine a Place. I host a podcast network, and so in Imagine a Place Productions, we have a podcast that explores sustainability called Break Some Dishes. We've got a podcast that explores skill sets, and it's called The Skill Set. And then we've got one that explores resilience called the Resilience Lab.
Awesome.
And so all of those come together to kind of create and they all in some way eventually tie back to place, right? And design. But then we also, on our website, ofs.com, we have a section of the site called U Plus. And that's where we actually store a lot of the insights around places' impact on people. And that's a great resource for someone to go to who's interested in exploring the subject of place.
You've made me interested, Doug. I didn't realize how much I needed this in my life until you've helped bring it to mine. So I hope others could really feel and pick up on that as well. Thank you so much for your time, sir. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yes, you bet. My pleasure as well. Thanks, Matthew.
Perfect. I'll cut it from there and just
Cool.
do my little outro. Thanks again to, Doug Shapiro. Hey, I mean it though. Thank you so much. It's always interesting to see where we can take things. And your idea to, I guess, allow the interviewer to open up a little bit more, I think is a fantastic concept. And obviously
Oh,
comes from
thanks.
your experience with all these different podcast materials.
Well, I mean, I just feel like I have more questions than answers, especially around this subject. And you probably have more
Yeah.
answers.
Oh,
You probably have more questions too, but you have more answers than I do.
only because it's a narrow vision, right? A narrow field.
Yeah, but I was genuinely curious about like, well, what does Matthew think about design
I,
in
it's
the
interesting because
metaverse?
you help
So,
evoke the feeling of it, and it allows me to tie it to my already conceived ideas and to formulate new thoughts in the process. And yeah, it really does take me back to playing games. I think about I don't pay for that game anymore, but I still enter the World of Warcraft almost on a monthly basis in the free to access area, just so that I can be in that place, just so
I
I
love
can
that.
return to Azeroth, where these memories, most people that don't play game might not comprehend, but I have like 600 days played. That's 24-hour segments into that game. And that was years ago. I haven't done it for a long time, but I have lasting memories as if it were sitting down with you for
Mm.
lunch, as if it were going home for Christmas morning. I played with some people for 10 years. I know them better than friends in the real world because we were more able to open up to each other because of that veil of anonymity. And I apply
Oh
that
man.
to the actual real world where humans are buying furniture and getting, going to a psychologist appointment. And wow, oh, wow, the possibility there is, to me, it's clear, it's obvious. Like there's no other way.
I love it. I mean, you're describing that place. Like I would love the ability to recreate certain places
Yeah.
like that I have no longer access to.
Oh, my
Like
grandparents' orchard growing up, where they, or
yeah, it was for me. It was my grandparents' closet. Like
yes,
there was like a green shag carpet, and there was a closet, and it had all these games that I loved, and I
the
would
old
only get to see
Sorry
it.
and
Yeah,
Scrabble and
and like
yeah,
I want to open that door and see that closet.
absolutely. Amen, man.
It's
Man,
cool.
keep up the good work, Doug.
Thanks.
And if you
Yeah, I
ever want to
appreciate it.
reach out for any reason, any purposes, I live out
Yeah.
in Western Canada, and I'm always happy to chat on this subject. Just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. If I do a metaverse kind of thing, it would be really cool to have you be a
Totally.
part of it.
Totally. Yeah. Keep me in mind. Enjoy the rest of your
Yeah.
day, sir. I'll have this episode up at least by the end of the day. Uh,
Oh wow.
yeah.
You move fast.
I'm ready to rock and roll. This is
All
the
right.
plan. You're on the schedule, so we'll get her done. Hey,
That's awesome. Awesome.
thank you.
Well, great to connect.
Great to meet you. Thanks very much, Doug.
See you, Matthew.
Bye bye.